Welcome to Caregiving Out Loud and What the Experts Say. Today we're talking to Vicki Searcy, our resident expert. Before retiring, Vicki was president of the National Association Medical Staff Services Certification Council and oversaw the credentialing of hospital doctors, a winner of the NAMSS Hall of Fame Award, and deemed Woman of the Year in Healthcare for the City of Los Angeles. Vicki is also our resident expert, writing a monthly column, What You Need to Know, for our magazine, Caregiving Out Loud. So Vicki, you have been overseeing and qualifying doctors and medical staff for credentials and quality assurance throughout your career in one way or another. How would you sum up the focus of your career and how it evolved?
The way my career evolved was I accidentally landed in a hospital.
Because you didn't start out in this field. You actually started out in music.
Off in this field.
You started out in music, right?
That's correct. But I was, I needed to work, and I was working at the University of Arkansas, and I was not enjoying that job. And so anyway, I ended up at the local hospital, and it was just one of those situations where I was in HR and I was talking to the HR director, and she said, I think that Sister John will want to meet you. And Sister John was the CEO of the hospital. It was a Catholic hospital. And so we just hit it off, and that's how my career started. She told me later, she said, I knew within about 3 minutes that I was going to hire you. And so she gave me rein to do a lot of things, and I learned a lot, and I loved working in healthcare. And so I did that for a while, and then I moved to California and I was in another hospital that went through a big merger and so forth. And from there, I started my own consulting company. So
you have been such a leader and innovator in a field that was a big leap, for music.
Yes, it was. But, I had an affinity for it. And of course, for many, many years, I worked really, really hard, because I was constantly on a learning curve, which was, it was good. It certainly kept me occupied. But I loved working in healthcare. Sometimes I miss some of the people that I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
So, for many years I worked on the hospital side. And then when I went into consulting, I normally worked with hospitals, but I did work with medical groups and, medical societies, all kinds of places like that.
But sum up for us just really what your focus was and how it evolved, just briefly in how that, what you actually did.
Okay, so I would say that my focus was all the things that related to doctors that worked in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for a doctor to work in a hospital, they have to be credentialed, mm-hmm. and they have to be privileged. And that encompasses, verification of all their qualifications and then determining what specific types of things they're going to be allowed to do in the hospital. So, doctors, once they get in the hospital, they dictate medical records, they complete medical records. They are, they need to be cognizant of how long the patient is being in the hospital, and is the hospital going to lose a lot of money? So all of those kinds of things were the things that I dealt with. And a lot of them, including quality, like what are the doctor's outcomes, as compared to his or her colleagues, that kind of thing. So all of those things, related back to the doctor, and they all relate to hospital regulations because hospitals have to be accredited in order to get paid. They have to be licensed in order to operate, and the state licenses them, and they have to be approved to get Medicare funds.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they're going to take, Blue Cross, those kind of payers, they normally have to be accredited. That's one of the requirements. So the accreditation process encompasses all those areas that I worked in. So, knowing the regulations and how to meet them was a big factor in what I did.
So in order for a doctor to, and was it just doctors, come and work in a hospital, they had to go through a process of what their privileges would be based on what they specialize in.
Yeah, their education and training and the experience that they had pretty recently, within the last couple of years.
Right.
Yes.
And oversaw that. So that evolved into something different.
Well, yes, how it evolved was that it was a lot of data to keep track of. And so I ended up working in a healthcare software company and helped them develop software that would help manage all of this data and help to automate it. Because, there's some hospitals that have 1,000 or 2,000 doctors on the staff, and keeping track of when does their license expire? What is their DEA number? When does that expire? Do they have insurance?
Also, all of the specialties.
Yes.
You had to research and articulate onto, into that data, into that software.
Yes. Correct. So like if you were a family physician, what did you learn how to do during school? And what should a hospital expect that you would be able to do? Or, if you were a general surgeon or a neurologist, all of those specialties, have specific things that they do. And anyway, as you can see, it's really interesting work, and I really enjoyed it, and I loved helping to automate it.
Yeah, but that is a huge, huge undertaking.
The company that I work for patented the privileging process. Yes.
Yeah.
It's the only one out there.
Right. But you were part of that.
Oh, absolutely. My name's on the patent.
Yeah. That's very exciting.
That was exciting.
So, you've been on the other side also as a caregiver on the other end.
For my father, and for my mother's still alive. And she's almost 97.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, my daughter's watching over her now because, as you know, I live in Portugal and my mom lives in California.
Right. So it's a remote situation, which
is
challenging.
Yeah.
So do you think that people plan in advance for caregiving?
I think for the most part, no, they don't. And it just kind of sneaks up on them and, they're unprepared. And really, I think that, all the different agencies that you can reach out and tap into are pretty much unknown to most of the people, and it's even as a healthcare consumer, like me, just getting a bill from Medicare and trying to figure out what it says and how much of that money you owe. I mean, that is a huge challenge. Right. And there's companies out there that actually help you figure out your bill. So yeah, it's very difficult. It's complicated, and it's difficult for many people.
Yeah. I mean, it seems that not planning is not confined to any one group. It's not confined to, say, people who say, well, I really can't afford anything anyway, or I have the money to do it, so I'll probably just figure it out as I go, because I have the money. So it's like either end of the spectrum, they are not planning in advance for caregiving an aging parent.
Well, that's true. I mean, and if somebody does have the money, you can hire people and have them come into your home and so forth. But healthcare in the United States is so very expensive that I think a lot of people really don't have the resources to pay for a lot of assistance when they need it.
Right. But having the money doesn't solve a lot of the problems. I mean, you have to coordinate with family, manage medical and non-medical,
Yes.
elements of that. So
it's almost like it's a full-time job. When
right.
my father passed away, 20 years ago. And my mom at that time was, she was in her 70s, and it was practically her full-time job getting him to and from the doctor.
Right.
Because he had a neurologist, he had a cardiologist, he had an internist, and it was just visit after visit after visit, just,
right.
Trying to coordinate all of those things. And he couldn't drive anymore. And, and then when
and
he
monitor the condition as it
evolved. Yeah. And then, making sure that he was eating the right things at home and getting his medications, keeping track of medications, all of that is very difficult. And I know it was difficult for my mom because, she was in her 70s herself.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think for the caregivers, and this is across the board, these are the adult children, of aging parents. I think that for the most part, and I'm asking you to look at this maybe not through your eyes because you were in healthcare and you were much more savvy about it, even though everybody has, a lot of things to cope with that are challenging. But I think for most people, there's a cognitive dissonance that just affects everyone. It's like a coping mechanism so that they don't have to face the reality of losing someone that's so important in their life.
Yes.
And it's like, if I don't plan, they won't die,
My mother had that exact same attitude. She would not, until about 3 days before my dad died, she would not admit that he was not going to get better.
Yeah.
She didn't want to talk about it to me. And I'm the oldest child. I have a brother and sister. And she actually got really angry at me one time when I called the doctor to ask him, what my dad's prognosis was, because I traveled a lot for healthcare and I wanted to know, when I needed to start planning to not be traveling so much.
Right.
And she got really angry because she did not want to accept the fact that he was not going to make it through this illness.
Right.
And it's really sad because she felt that way. I was never really able to sit down and talk to my dad about his illness and how he felt about it and so forth, because my mom made really sure that she didn't want me to be alone with my dad because she knew that I would try to talk to him about that. So that's the extent to which it can go. And it's really sad.
This is very typical. I mean, every family is complicated in its own way. And so the way that you have this silence, around so many issues.
Yeah.
And then when someone is starting to decline, that just makes it so much more difficult. It's
It
it's really
does.
amazing.
It
And even
does.
financially, it's like I think sometimes people don't even want to know how much long-term care is going to cost. It's like being afraid to balance your checkbook because you're pretty sure you spent more than you had this month.
It's a good one. Yes.
I don't know. Do you think you can manage your money better not knowing how much you have?
No, I have to know how much I have.
Also, the importance of someone in your life. It doesn't have to be because you're necessarily close. I mean, if you're not close, that person still holds an incredible significance in your life and your history.
Yeah.
When they're gone, that void it is just filled in very different ways for different people.
I find myself sometimes watching my dad's favorite movies. One of the movies he loved the most was A Man in the Gray Flannel Suit. It's a
Mhm.
real old movie with Gregory Peck. And so I was thinking about my dad about a week ago, and I actually went and bought the movies so I could watch it because it made me think about why he enjoyed that movie so much.
Yeah, that's very, very sweet. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the ripple effect of not planning and how tremendous that is. And I mean, it's really not planning is like shooting yourself in the foot, it doesn't make any sense. It goes against all logic. And yet people don't do it.
Well, I mean, first of all, and I was thinking a lot about this, Lee. First of all, if in order to plan for someone else, you need to plan for yourself.
True.
If you don't plan for yourself, you're not going to be able to plan very well for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this happened after my dad died. I traveled a lot, and I actually had a pulmonary embolism happen to me after I got off of a plane in
Wow.
Los Angeles. Now, did I have a advance directive in my purse? No. And there I was very far away, from home, and the EMTs came and everything. And fortunately, I did come to and was able to tell them who I was and to get in contact with one of my kids.
Mm-hmm.
But see, that's the kind of thing that can happen. And so, I wasn't taking care of myself and having those kind of plans.
Right.
And when you travel a lot, you should think about that, right?
Well, if you're alive, you should think about that.
Yes. Yeah,
Because
you're right.
everybody is going to age. So
Yeah.
everybody has to plan. And it really is the perfect time to do that when you're looking at an aging parent to plan for yourself and your own family.
And then you can help them plan as well.
Well, it's also a great way to start that conversation. Mom,
Yes.
I am starting to plan for retirement and for what's going to happen and how my children are going to cope with the expense of any kind of care I need. And then say, I think that we should do this together.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It really is.
Yeah.
My mother doesn't have an advance directive. She won't do it. But that's just kind of her personality. You know what I mean?
Yes. No. I mean, I just think of planning in advance is the best mitigation possible. And a lot of the time it's the small things that have such a domino effect. So if you're not fully engaged, you miss these small things until they turn into a crisis. So if you have a plan to follow and there are checklists and you can actually be less engaged because you're distracted by work or your own life, you can still be very thorough because you're not relying on a hit or miss, and you're not having to rely on your memory either to go through and check on certain things, because you're coming in out of a different life into, I'm in my caregiving mode now.
Yes.
It's really important to have a system.
And to have those conversations with the person that you're responsible for, overseeing their care. And it doesn't have to be just, do you want to be resuscitated, or do you want to do not resuscitate order? It's things like, well, under what circumstances would you go to a nursing home, or would you, how do you want to be cared for?
I have a form for exactly that the family sits down, and the name of the form is conditions under which would trigger a move.
Yeah.
And it goes through every stage. So the family agrees ahead of time what those are, so that you're not, caught at the last minute arguing about why or where or what you're going to do. And it's really funny, Vicki, because that one process happens really early on when you're planning. And it's amazingly pretty easy because you already know whether or not you're going to caregive at home. You already know that you will or you won't do that. You pretty much know how this is going to flow. And, and when you put that down on paper, that actually gives you the structure for your whole plan. And everything is planned out from those decisions. So it gets with a lot of confidence.
Well, and I think, if you don't do that, and, something occurs and you have to then make a decision that, my loved one's going to go in a nursing home, or then you feel like a failure, because that person might have said, I never want to be in a nursing home, but they never really went through the process of talking about the conditions under which that might be necessary.
Right.
And so I've had relatives who have said, yeah, I tried to take care of whomever at home. He had dementia and I failed, and he had to go to a nursing home. Well, they didn't fail.
No.
It was the safest place for, in this case, one of my uncles. But my aunt felt like she had failed because she wasn't able to do it at home, and they'd never had that conversation.
Having that conversation and also planning for it allows you to know what to expect. So when it happens, it's not a surprise. It's still sad, but it's not a surprise. And that changes everything. When my father, he lived with me, and at the point where, and he had Alzheimer's. So at the point where he had to go to a nursing home or an assisted living, and I found the best one on the planet,
Yeah.
But, I felt like I was sending him to Guantanamo Bay or something, Yeah. I mean, I felt that very same thing. I felt like I had failed.
But you didn't. You were just making sure he was in a place where he was going to get the care that he needed at that point in his stage of Alzheimer's, right?
Right. So my neighbor wouldn't show up at 7:00 in the morning with my father. Knocking on the door.
Well, I was reading that, when you're talking about people not planning, I think it's only about maybe up to 20% of people that actually do.
I'm shocked at that high number.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, I think that's really incorrect.
Well, and for me, when I moved to Portugal, I live here by myself. My family is in the United States.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. But one of the first things that I wanted to do was make sure that, I had documented if like if I had a heart attack and had to go,
Right.
the ambulance came, who would they call and what should happen?
So the big picture is pretty important, when you react
Yes.
to events, financially, and also considering the impact that things have on each member of the family. I mean, each member of the family has a different situation.
Yeah.
And so it's going to have a different impact on them. And, again, reacting to things individually, it just doesn't give you the context you need to make your best decisions or the time to think about things carefully and what you do and how it impacts the overall plan. Having that context is so important. If you make a decision to do something that runs through your money quicker than you anticipated,
Yes.
then where's it going to come from?
Right.
So what are the chances that people know how to do all the things that you have to do during caregiving?
About zero.
I mean, from managing the big move to selling the house, which are the non-medical things, to managing their care, at home, to even knowing exactly how to deal with the doctor in an appointment and in a hospital emergency. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, you have to manage their financial affairs, their legal affairs. There's a lot that goes into this.
Well, there is. And I think, that the idea of aging and the eventual demise of a person, something that people don't want to talk about.
Right.
And I think about, when I had my kids, it was the very beginning of having husbands in the delivery. In fact, after I got married, we moved to Phoenix, and there was only one hospital that allowed husbands to be in the delivery room.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the hospital that I chose to go to. What actually happened was people became very much more knowledgeable about the process of giving birth and what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And, they go to classes and all kinds of things. And that is so, so beneficial. Yeah, knowing what to expect and avoiding those kind of surprises. I mean, that is such a boon. But, when my mom had kids, she knew nothing. She knew absolutely nothing.
Well, knowing what to expect is the biggest stress reducer there is.
So, if you are a caregiver for someone and they have some type of an illness, for them, knowing what to expect is, I mean, I can't imagine not having that information.
Well, imagine too, if you know what to expect, how that impacts the whole family.
Yes.
Because that's the point at which they're highly emotional because there's some an event or crisis or something. And
Right.
then they have to make a quick decision. It may not be the best decision. Can you agree on it when you're under stress, you're upset? That's not exactly the perfect time,
No.
to make a decision. So, and then maybe there's a do-over because which is
Right.
even more stressful.
Well, and it's the person that it's going to be the most stressful on is the person who's ill.
Right. Of course.
You, you
And
know?
their outcomes are going to suffer.
Well, yeah, and they're probably feeling guilty about making everybody else stressed out.
Well, it's like having a plan takes away the potential conflict that can happen in a family. Whereas you could be building this beautiful family legacy around this process of caring for a parent as they age. And it's kind of a degree of one or the other. You're either stressed and in conflict,
Yeah.
or you're building this loving family legacy of care.
It's too bad that we don't have, the same type of information that we have about giving birth, because it makes all the difference in the world, knowing what to expect,
Yeah.
having a plan, right?
Well, you can have that with love care.
Yes. I know. And here you are.
Here I am.
With all this information and ready to provide it.
Yeah. And you know what my biggest challenge is? Caregivers don't want to plan in advance.
Oh, that's really a shame.
So how do you think that that we can get caregivers to plan in advance? It's just human nature that they don't want to think about it.
They don't want to think about it. I honestly, Lee, I don't know.
Huh.
But I think that the more people read about it and maybe see things on online, that kind of thing, it's going to be helpful, because it doesn't matter whether you plan for it or not. It still is going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Right. It's going to happen if you have parents, and obviously we all do. And I've thought about it for myself, because I don't want to be a burden to my children. And so we're having those discussions, which is good.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about aging, because caregivers are aging too. And they're aging even faster if they don't have a plan.
Well, yeah, stress ages people.
Right. So what I have found is that even though they become more aware from a logistical standpoint, perhaps during caregiving, they still, their awareness is still low when it comes to the medical part, because it's kind of like, if you haven't fallen, you really don't understand what that's like and what the ripple effect of that is and how long it takes to recover and what you need to think about to mitigate that in the future. I mean, there's so many things about aging that nobody tells you. It's like being pregnant. Used to, nobody knew. Now, everybody knows what to expect. Well, in aging, I don't think anybody knows what to expect at all. I encounter things every day that, small things, like a certain way of brushing your teeth, where you slant the brush and it goes up into your gums. Otherwise, you get gum disease because things are deteriorating when you age. I mean, just all kinds of things, from eyesight to keeping your strength.
Right.
If you don't keep your strength, or you have a foot problem, or there's so many things that have this huge ripple effect.
Right.
So aging is I think aging is tough business, and you have to take it very seriously.
Absolutely. And I mean, everybody's going to age in a different way. And I think that's one of the issues. But depending upon your genetics and how well you've taken care of yourself. Have you kept in shape? Do you still walk? Those kind of things.
But
How you age is really it's really going to be different.
And how you think of staying in shape when you're 25 is completely different of how you should think about it when you're 70,
Absolutely.
Because you do not recover as fast. Overdoing it at 25 is not the same thing as overdoing it at 70.
Right.
So there are so many aspects of how to age, and walking is not enough. Walking is not, everybody thinks, well, I'll just walk. There's a chain of muscles that catch you if you're about to fall, if they're strong. And walking does not strengthen those muscles.
No, but I've been on YouTube a lot, and there's a lot of information out there on what you can do at different ages to help keep yourself strong. Yeah, and it's not the same exercises that you might have done when you were 20, 25.
No.
And, just wanting to look good in a swimsuit.
Exactly.
And now you just, now at my age, I just want to make sure I keep mobile.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because, so you want to take care of your feet. You want to walk the correct way because you don't want to fall. All of those kinds of things. And I mean, there's a wealth of information out there, right?
There is. I mean, that's sort of the big challenge.
Yeah.
Too much information.
Well, they say aging is not for the faint of heart. And that's absolutely the truth, isn't it?
Right. And, if you're aging and you have dry eye, it's hard to stay on the computer long enough to learn what to do.
Yeah. That's true.
So let's talk about your big move and my big move, because both of us decided that that we were going to have a really different kind of retirement. And not that I'm retired yet.
No, you're not.
But how long? I mean, you moved to Portugal, I moved to Greece. And how long did you consider moving to Portugal before you moved?
Well, it was toward the end of COVID. It was, I gave my company a year's notice. And so once I knew that I was going to be leaving the company, I started thinking about, well, where do I want to live? And, I had always traveled whenever I could in Europe because I love European history and I love the old buildings. I mean, it was my happy place to be, was being in Europe just because of the surroundings. And I like the slower lifestyle, because I was like in a hamster cage before. So when I knew I was going to retire, that was in June. And so by September, I had scheduled a trip to Portugal with my daughter because I'd never been to Portugal before. And the way I decided on Portugal was based upon, doing a lot of reading about, well, how do you get a visa to, and a residency to live in a country in Europe? And at that time, Portugal was a very attractive place. They were making it possible to do. So, of course, I had to come here and take a look to see if it was the place that I thought I would like to live. And fortunately, it was. So, that was in September. And then I started doing the visa process in January. And on
That's amazing.
May 30th, 2022, I was here. So it was about, it was about a year. And, during that time, I had to wrap things up at work, sell my house,
Right.
sell all my belongings.
Right. This was the big move. And also, I mean, aside from all the bureaucracy that you have to, I mean, there's personal stuff for the big move there and planning. There's all the bureaucracy of the country that you're going to.
Right.
And the logistics, of navigating in the new country. But then there is the health care. And, in retirement in another country, you have to really make sure you have a plan.
Well, yeah. And, that was one of the things on the list that I was looking for in a country to move to was, does it have a good health care? And Portugal was ranked very high. I was also looking for other things such as safety and, weather. I love the weather here in Portugal because I was living in California. So I didn't want to move to a place where I was going to be in snowstorms, that kind of thing. But healthcare was definitely one of the top things that I was looking at. But you really don't know what it's like until you start using it.
Right. And you found a company that is an incredible concept that everybody needs, that I wish it existed everywhere.
Well, it was it's
Serenity, right.
And it was really designed for people who moved here from other countries to try to help them navigate the healthcare system here.
Right.
So, they help you find doctors, make appointments, all kinds of things like that. So it's really a very valuable service.
Yeah. I moved to Greece because my husband is Greek. And he was always going to come back to Greece for his retirement. The things that I find that are so incredible here, the food is so healthy.
Yeah.
It's not processed. If it's not in season, you can't find it. And so it's all local. You're buying feta cheese. It's from a farm that's maybe 50 miles away,
Yeah.
So everything is local, seasonal, everything they ever told us how to eat. That's the way everybody eats here. Naturally.
Same way in Portugal. I mean, it's that same thing. So, when I go to the store, I always want to buy products that are from Portugal, you go to the market, where there's the fresh foods and all that, and you want things that are fresh, grown here.
Right.
And it is incredible. The first time I tried orange juice here, I couldn't believe it. My granddaughter was visiting me and we would go out and she would always order orange juice. And I finally said, Catherine, that must really be good. And she said, well, here, Grandma, have a drink. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, no wonder I had never tasted any orange juice like that in my life.
Me neither. And we lived in California. And first of all, we have lemon trees and orange trees in our yard. And so we just picked them right off the tree and squeezed them. And it's incredible. Incredible.
It is incredible.
Well, things taste like they're supposed to taste here. And so you can keep things really simple in terms of ingredients because the ingredients are so magnificent. And one of the things I love is that you don't have to have a lot of money. Like everybody can afford the same fresh food because it's a community market. Everybody goes to the same market and there's fresh fish, there's fresh everything. And all these little local farmers, even the honey, the hives, you see those everywhere. It's not like, only if you have enough money can you get really good, fresh, great food.
It's hard to describe to somebody that hasn't experienced this.
Right.
But I mean, my tastes have completely changed
Hmm.
since I moved here. I've been here for almost 3 years, and I bought like a small little thing of sugar.
Hmm.
You know, they don't come in 5-pound bags here. It's like a small little thing, and I still have that sugar because the fresh fruit and everything is so good here. You don't crave adding sugar to food.
It's so sweet. It's
Yes.
incredible. I wanted to talk a little bit about the ageism that happens in the States versus here, because I feel like Greece is maybe the largest retirement community in the world.
You think?
Well, everybody's old. So we're sort of young, even though we're 70. So
Uh-huh.
um, people don't sell their houses and move and keep moving up. They keep the same house for generations, and the parents, as they age, they take care of the grandkids. They cook, and then they get taken care of, as they age.
Yeah.
And they are a vital part of the community. And because you can walk everywhere, they walk to their church, they walk to the bakery. Everybody is always walking. And it's so safe, so that,
Yeah.
an older person, you wouldn't just go, "Oh, I feel sorry for them." No, they're
Yeah.
walking the grandkids, and no matter if they're limping along, they're still out there. They're not sitting in a nursing home.
That's exactly the same way it is here in Portugal.
Yeah,
Um, it's the family unit, and it's
right.
so important and cohesive. And I think that older people are given a lot of respect. Here, there's little signs that if someone is pregnant or an older person, they get on the bus first. They want them to move to the head of the line, that kind of thing. So they're wanting to take care of people who might need a little extra help.
They're they're part of the fabric of the community. They're
Yeah.
not, disposable here. They're not in the way. In fact, they have these little buses that go throughout the neighborhoods that will take you to your doctor's appointment, that will take you to go get coffee with your friends. And then there's a bigger bus that takes all of these older women out to the beach and back in the same day.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That is so.
and they really believe in swimming in the sea here.
Uh-huh.
And no matter how old, they are at the beach.
Oh, that is great.
Oh, they have a system
Hmm.
of getting around, even if they are alone.
That's wonderful. I haven't noticed little buses taking people to the beach here, but one thing, I can ride the metro and all the buses for free.
Yeah, yeah,
So older people get a pass because I don't have a car here. I
right.
I walk,
You don't need
or I
one.
take the bus, or I take the metro, and that's healthy.
It totally is,
Yeah.
because it's so different, being with your community and being with people when you are in a car and you pull into the parking lot versus,
Yeah.
walking everywhere, aside from the, obvious exercise. But ageism, I think, is a big problem in the States.
I agree. I
We've talked about
agree.
that a lot lately.
Hmm.
In the medical field, even, when you go to the doctor, so much of the time they don't see you. They see you as someone kind of on the way out.
Well, and someone that might take extra time.
Right.
I think that's one of the big differences that I see in the United States healthcare system versus Portugal is here the doctors take the time to talk to you,
Really. Yeah.
and you don't feel rushed through a visit. No,
Never.
you don't. No. And it's just a whole different, mindset. I'd
Yeah.
say, the US healthcare system is all about money.
And there's not 10 people in the waiting room at the same time.
No.
And our primary doctor, his father was Ethan's mother's doctor.
Wow.
So there is such, and we walk to him,
Yeah.
There's
Talk about continuity.
the community structure is amazing.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much the case in many European countries.
Yeah.
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 And it's lovely to experience it, isn't it?
It's incredible. I feel
Yes.
like, I hate to say it, but I feel so much happier and safer here as I age
Mm-hmm.
than I would have been in the United States because, everybody gets shuffled off to the nursing home.
Well, yeah, and when you live in the United States, that is not it's not designed for people to walk in most instances. Where I lived in California, you had to have a car.
And families are spread out.
Yeah.
They live all over the place,
Right.
and they are definitely not living in the same house or growing up in the same neighborhood as they, and living their entire life in the same place. Nobody
Right.
does that.
Yeah. Well, it probably, that's one of the reasons why you have the problem of knowing what to do when, you are a caregiver and your parents are aging.
Right. There's so
Because you
much
might not
more.
even be Johnny on the spot,
Right. There's so much more. And because you're moving up all the time, in buying bigger houses and bigger cars and all this kind of stuff, then it's like your financial situation in terms of long-term care, you have to be really, really careful.
Yeah.
Here, the kids inherit the house, so they're not paying for a house. So, they don't have that monthly expense.
Yeah. And that typically does not happen in the US.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's so funny. I see sometimes we're doing this experiment, where we're going to see what happens if we make a neighborhood where everybody can walk everywhere and have a central park and, walk to the grocery store and, in their cars or outside of the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this big experiment. And I'm just going, right. Yeah. Well, we know that works.
Yeah, we know it works.
We've known that for hundreds of years, I think.
Yeah, because that's the way European cities are.
Right, exactly.
And it's really wonderful. The sense of community that you get and going, to the markets and walking up and down the street and seeing the little businesses and
yeah.
You get to know people in your community, and it's really nice.
Right. Where I buy my clothes, the woman who owns the store lives right across the street. Yeah.
Yeah.
And her shop is, I walk there because it's next door to the bakery.
Well, that's the other thing. You buy bread more often because it doesn't keep, because it's not full of preservatives.
Right. Right.
Nothing
keeps. And so you do buy everything fresh.
You buy everything fresh. It's the best way, isn't it?
It is. It is. Well, This has been great.
Yes.
I love that you have moved by yourself to a foreign country and how much you're thriving there and how independent you are, because it takes a lot of courage to do that.
You know, I've been pretty independent all my life, but what's really interesting is when I lived in the US and I traveled for work all the time,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have any friends in my community.
Mm-hmm.
I had family, but I didn't have friends there because I was never around.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was around, I would spend time with my family. So here in Lisbon, you know, I've made two really, really good friends who are two women who also moved here by themselves. So
that was amazing. And what's even more amazing is that one of those friends is my friend
I know.
who I've known for 40 years.
And that's how you and I got acquainted. So
That's right.
That was great.
Right. That's right. So, Vicki, she is our resident expert, and she writes a column, what you need to know, each issue. And you can look for her column coming up in
All
the
right.
next issue, along with her interview.
All right.
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you, Lee. This was a lot of fun.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.